All right, hey guys, it's Chloe. This is COVID Chats. I'm with Elliot Sailors, who this is our second go at doing this interview. Unfortunately, the first one didn't record, but how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I like your shirt.
Thank you, thank you. It was I was actually with one of my best friends in West Hollywood, and we had just went to like my first lesbian night ever. And I was feeling it. I was so excited. I was finally out, and there was a street vendor selling these shirts. And I was like, I feel like this is my moment. And so we went and we both got these shirts. And yeah, it's a nice
So
if
when
people have
when
any.
was it that you came out then?
So it's funny. I always say that I really don't feel like I ever had to come out to anybody else except myself. Um, I feel like, I always thought I was like a sexually promiscuous person and I just love having sex with women as well. And it never in my mind did it ever occur to me that I could date women in a romantic way like that. And because I grew up in a really small town and the only like representation you had for, queer people they were like truck drivers or people I never saw myself. So I was like, oh, this can't be me. It wasn't until I was 24 after I got divorced from my son's dad that I actually gave myself space to ask those hard questions. And I'm so embarrassed probably for the first few women that I that I dated. It was so uncomfortable. I know I went into it with like the gender role mentality, and I was like, so who pays? Because we're both these poor people. But it was a journey for sure. But yeah, I was probably about 24 when I finally was accepting to myself. Everyone else was like, yeah, we've known this, but for me, it was like a shock for some reason.
Yeah.
What about you?
Um, so for me, like pretty much from the time I started having sex, I was like, oh, I'm bisexual. Um, I didn't really see myself dating women initially, though, even though I knew that I liked sleeping with women. Because I was just kind of like, just to be really honest, like I didn't have very many female friends. I didn't really see myself as someone who wanted to hang out that much with most of the females that I knew in my life up till that point. And the few female friends that I did have were straight, and there was no interest on either of our parts of dating. And so it just didn't like my friends were guys. I liked spending time with guys.
Mhm.
So it made sense to me that since I also like sleeping with men, then clearly that's who I would date, the ones that I liked hanging out with the most and wanted to have sex with. Um, and like in hindsight, I think that um, that came from when I was 7. There was my best friend at the time was this girl who um, I don't know, she was my best friend. I guess I wasn't her best friend. And I just like got crushed. And I think that at that point, like I just had this moment of like, okay, if that was my best friend and if that's like as good as it gets, then like screw that. Like
Yeah.
I don't need friends. I don't need to be that close to people. Clearly, like females are not trustworthy. Like they do not make good friends. Like no.
You were
Um,
7.
and so like, and I was 7, right? So it wasn't like sexual. I was just kind of like,
I
you
love
know,
you.
not having it with the female trust, I guess. Um, so yeah, eventually I just got to a point where I did meet females along the way that I felt like I could date, but I mean, not many, you know.
Yeah.
It's like for me, the process was just what the process was, um, and really it came because I stopped being sexually attracted to men, which was very confusing for me because I know that I was before.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, am I going through early menopause? Like, what is happening? Like, why is my body changing on me? Um, and you know, eventually I learned about sexual fluidity, and it really like can be fluid, like that your body um changes on you, you know. So, you know, it was kind of a relief to eventually learn that. Can you hear the beeping in the background? Just
Vaguely.
like a car thing going on out there. Happening. Okay. Hopefully it's not as loud for you as it is for me.
No.
So it was a relief to learn about sexual fluidity, both for me and for my ex-husband, because we were really like, what's going on? Like, we know that we still love each other and we still care about each other and we want what's best for each other, but you know, what's best was no longer having sex because it was really awkward for both of us. You know, it's not like he wanted me to do something that I didn't want to do.
Right.
And yeah, so it was a confusing time. But then once you learn that these things they have a name because they happen to other people too,
Yeah.
is a big relief. And that's a lot of why I think language is so important in the community. A lot of people get upset about all of this language, both in and out of the community, right? There's like all these words we have to learn and being PC and whatnot. And obviously we need to respect, you know, people. But at the same time, it's even more than respect. It's being able to have these words for ourselves. It's being able to know how to call ourselves and know that there's a community of people who also experience these things, and not feeling so alone, even if we don't have a specific person to call. Just even knowing we're not the only one is really nice.
I think when I first heard the word femme, it was such a relief for me. I remember being like, this is a thing. They're like, oh, you're. I was like, people always say I don't look gay. I'm not like, what does that look like? And so I'm like, oh, you're femme. And I was like, what is this? And so I remember like Googling and being like, there's people that look like me. Like, I was like, there's a word for it. Like, I found it. Yeah. Do you feel like that was a little bit of like, I know I struggled with it kind of growing up and coming to terms. I feel like it was a little internalized homophobia as well. I feel like that's.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I was raised that homosexuality is wrong. I was raised Mormon, or LDS.
Oh, really?
And it just, honestly, like, we didn't talk about it that much though, because there wasn't anyone around that it seemed to be a conversation about. It was just like this other thing that existed somewhere in the world. And I had not been aware that applied to me. So it wasn't like I had no experience of actively resisting that, or I'm going to quiet that part of me, or I'm going to pretend that isn't there. I was really like unaware. And you know, in hindsight, I think it probably is accurate that I was scared of that, just like I was scared of just being hurt, period, right? So like my resistance in making female friends was like, oh, this one hurt me, I don't want to be hurt again. And so it makes perfect sense that it, you know, it was like, if I let myself get close to women, that it will hurt me more. That on some subconscious level, that's what I was thinking.
Wow.
I don't think that, I mean, you know, there's also this argument that anybody who's homophobic, it's because they're secretly gay. I don't think that's true. I think there's people who are just straight up homophobic and straight, and they just are homophobic. But I think it's probably true a lot of the time too, that people feel such a resistance to coming to terms with that fact in ourselves. And really don't see it in ourselves until we see it. So they don't know that that's even what they're doing.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a common thing for people to be terrified of what they don't know. I don't know what this is going to look like for me. How is this going to change my life? Am I going to lose people in my life because of, you know, and so that there's a lot of anxiety around that in itself. but you had, I remember I loved talking about this last time we tried to do this, but so people who don't know, you're a model, advocate. I don't know, do you also act as well?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you act, but you had, you did something that changed your career pretty drastically. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So, my whole life from when I was like 9 years old, I always had really long hair. And in 2011 is when I first started thinking, it wasn't like the first time I heard the word androgynous, and it certainly wasn't the first time that it was being used in the fashion industry, but it was the first time that I kept hearing it. And Andrea Pejic at the time was being described as androgynous, although I know she does not now use the word androgynous. But at that time, for me, it was really like, oh wow, here's a person who is modeling as both male and female and has long blonde hair like I do, like I did at the time. And I was like, I want to do that too. And I was not, accepted in menswear and being able to model with the guys with that hair. And so I actually cut my hair short in a men's style, or masculine style, or however people feel the need to label that, and started modeling menswear. And so it was from October 2012 that I started working more in men's than I did in women's. And it just so happens my name is Elliot. So, I could be presented in that way. And I was passable, which was more of, a concern at that time. And also it's like, I didn't even know the word passable yet at that time, right? It was just like, I can do this. I look like it, right? Like, it's, there's so much that I hadn't learned. And yeah, so I started doing menswear too. And after I first started doing it, it was going really well. And then it was like a year later that it kind of hit the news cycle. And I did the Today Show and The View and CNN. And
Wow.
it became a much more public conversation than I had anticipated. I did want to create a space in modeling. But I didn't know it was gonna, it was gonna go like that.
Wow.
And there were people who, were super supportive and excited and thought it was awesome. There were brands who had previously been interested in me, but now that it had become a public conversation, were no longer interested.
Wow.
Because it wasn't like cool or on trend like it is now, It was, ooh, do we want to be, someone associated with, that whole gender thing, or I don't know. It was before Orange is the New Black. It was before Caitlyn Jenner. It was before people had a lot more understanding like they do now. And so, two of the things that people came at me with was, one, having straight privilege, which is accurate. I was married to my husband at the time. And I do think it's true that, the story got as much traction as it did because I was married to a man, whereas if it was like a known lesbian that cut their hair to look masculine,
Right.
I don't think they'd probably see that as news so much.
Wow.
So, privilege is real, and acknowledging privilege, I think, is important. And it did take that for me to really get it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first to even learn that it was a thing, because I hadn't even been aware before, and then to really get that it was true. But then there were people who were just mean about it just to be, I don't know, upset, which, can be hard to deal with, especially as someone who did identify as bi, being really like, nope, you're not in the community. You're not one of us because you are in a straight relationship. Was hard to hear. And then also being accused of co-opting a trans narrative. Oh. Meaning that when I was calling myself a male model, that I was acting like the trans experience was my own, when in fact it wasn't. Wow. And the trans experience is not mine. And it is true that that is not my experience. But also I was not trying to tell that story as if it was my own, and that was being misinterpreted. But in order to be responsible for the fact that I didn't want people to think that, I was like, okay, I need to learn what the right language is, so that this is not being misrepresented, and also people don't feel exploited.
Right.
So that's why I say now that I model menswear, as opposed to calling myself both a female and a male
Right.
model.
And that's so good for you as well, just to, how you took that experience and used it as a like a pivotal learning experience of the learning the language, understanding where some people in the community were coming from. But I feel like some of the worst shade, the shade that comes is within the community.
Oh yeah, no, it's
We're so ruthless to each other sometimes.
yep. It can be less than fun. Um, I don't want to I don't want to like scare people away and be like, we're sorry, because there's a lot of amazing people in the community too, like us, right?
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of times the people who are the loudest are the people who, take to social media, or the media in general. Um, and so those are the ones that we hear. Those are,
Mhm.
and too often I think that even if it's the same amount of people who are writing positive and negative things, somehow we let the negative ones affect us more. Even actually, if there's more positive than negative, we still let the negative affect.
Right.
Um, and it is tricky. It's hard to not let it affect you at all. But at the same time, what gives me strength and makes it easier for me is like being on a mission to do something about it. Not to fight back, not to be angry in return, but just to bring more acceptance to the community, to do more, to educate everybody.
That
And
was actually, I just went through that maybe 2 episodes ago. I interviewed a mom from Teen Mom, and it's so funny. Going into it, I literally just thought, having people on reality TV come on and talk about how reality TV is going to change. I didn't keep up with all the extracurriculars that had gone on, excuse me, since the show, and I guess there were a lot of people very upset that I didn't come across as like in an angry way, or really, I had people messaging me like "rip her to shreds" and like, things like that. And that's just not me. And so I guess the way that when I posted that episode, like I was not prepared for like over 150 comments of like how I'm terrible. There was a page that somebody quickly dedicated to me that said that I'm not actually Black and I'm definitely not gay. And so like, and there was all of these things that like I was so like, what? And these are
yeah,
people in like the community.
blindside
It's like,
guy.
what? It's crazy, but you take it with a grain of salt. And I think that,
Well, it's also like somebody's like dedicating like a lot of time to being angry and upset. So I think also just like reminding ourselves, like, wait a minute, like this is somebody who's taking time in their life to bring nastiness. Like, what if I just take that exact same amount of time to do the opposite? You
right.
know, and I think that allows for us to heal ourselves more easily. Is when we seek to bring more light, right? So rather than like defending ourselves and being like, that's not what I meant, and that's not what I said, and yes, this is me, how dare you say this, we're using that time to be upset too. Whereas when we use that time to stand up for anybody else who's dealing with the same thing, we get to heal ourselves in the process.
Absolutely. And I didn't regret it, and I wouldn't go back and change anything. I learned a lot by having patience for someone that, it'd be so easy to react or be angry and things like that. It was a good learning experience for sure. Well, you also head of movement Be You Be True. What is that?
Yeah. So Be You Be True started as a hashtag in 2012 when I first just learned what hashtags were. Um, and it, with the, wanting to empower others to be true to themselves And also with the recognition that when we are encouraging anyone to be true to themselves, that means we're encouraging everyone else around us, right? So even when our truths do not coincide, being able to respect everybody's truths equally. And I do want to also, acknowledge that not everybody has the safety to be fully self-expressed, to be totally out. Um, and so it's not me saying like trying to force anybody out or you do you no matter what. But it is saying that you be true to who you know yourself to be as a human being. And oftentimes when we aren't safe to express our gender or sexuality, I think that we also quiet a lot of the rest of who we are.
Right.
Because when that part or any part is not accepted, we start to silence the rest of ourselves. And there's so much more that we all are as individuals outside of our gender or sexuality. And so we can still be true to that part. And the more, love and light and education that we bring, hopefully the safer we will get in being able to be fully who we are.
Yeah.
And in the You Be True movement now, it has become an organization where it is not entirely a nonprofit, because we do have a division that actually works with individuals and brands on their websites, their social media, their branding, their marketing, in how to really put themselves out there, being deeply connected to their why, and being able to live in a public way, a way that is authentic to who they are as an individual or as a brand. But then for a lot of people, it's figuring out their why in the first place. It's, what is it that I want to do here? How do I go about that? How do I figure that out along the way? How do I express that to other people? And so I work one-on-one with a lot of individuals in helping them to do that. And sometimes that even becomes, goes into regular coaching sessions. But a lot of times it's conversations like we're having right now, that are just, it's so cool. Like as we learn more about each other, we just learn more about ourselves, and we get to share it with other people. So thank you for having the platform that you do that does this for people. And that's what we're also, developing now at Be True, is creating these kinds of conversations where I get to speak with individuals and brands. And ultimately, we're hoping that there will be more people interviewing each other, where people will get to share, those who are brands and those who are, even selling something, that it's an opportunity then for them to be seen and to be heard. And why does their brand exist the way that it does? And where can you buy it? And how can we support each other through this time that is so scary and even harder right now, especially.
Absolutely. I feel like the work that you're doing is so important, especially with brands. I know it can probably seem really scary for a brand to, want to be really inclusive, or they don't really know how to go about doing that. I know I've worked with a brand that was having those conversations, like we're feeling, it's going to be too controversial, or we're going to get blowback. And I think that that's so awesome that you're taking the time to do that. That's huge.
And there are still brands, who are going to receive blowback by being inclusive. And there are brands who are going to receive blowback by not being inclusive.
Right.
And, making those brands who receive the blowback for not being inclusive really like checking themselves, like what the heck is it that we're doing, and making sure that they're not moving forward in a way that's like just trying to avoid that happening again, checking the boxes so they don't get in trouble, because that's really inauthentic. So that's why we take on the work that we do, is having people get really like intimately connected to themselves and where they actually stand and what they actually value.
And you're actually in quarantine with your partner right now. Yes.
Yes, I'm lucky that I have her here, especially because she's such a good chef.
Oh. I'm getting sick of eating my own food. How will
So
you
yes.
celebrate Pride now that we'll be indoors? Do you have any plans of how you're going to do that?
I don't know exactly what we're gonna do for Pride. There's, I've been seeing what's going to be happening online in the UK. Um, for me, it's really like looking to where I can give back, because all of those who went before us, who made it safe that we can even exist here in the world as much as we do, um, there are still those who, it's not safe even in our own country, and looking at what we can do to make it safer for them, and also for, the number of people in the community who really are suffering due to homelessness, or abuse or other things like that that are happening.
Mhm.
And so Outright International is an organization that exists to find other organizations, and to support them in supporting the community. So I
Mhm.
actually just did the Levi's Pride campaign with my
I
partner.
saw that.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So 100% of the net profits of anything that you buy from that collection will actually go to Outright International.
Oh, wow. Good.
Yeah. So if you want to rock some Pride gear from them, they're going to be
Yeah.
doing as much as they can to support the community, which is cool. And that is in collaboration with the Self Evident Project. I don't know if you know who they are, but they always wear the black t-shirts with the white writing that say "We are you,"
Mhm.
and it's really just reminding people that we really are all the same. It's kind of what I was talking about before. It's who we are as people is not our gender or sexuality,
Right.
right? That is a part of us, but it is not who we are in our entirety. And like when people are saying like, oh, but you don't look gay or that, it's like what they're really saying is like, you look normal,
Right.
right? So it's this weird place that you get caught of because you look normal, right? People are like, oh no, you are like us, don't act like you're that other that's not us, right? Which that you are, though, right? Like that you're gay, so then it's this being invalidated,
Right.
on both sides. And so We Are You exists, so that hopefully no one will ever hear that again. And then also the people who are seen as not like us, right? That it's like, oh shoot, they are like us too.
Right.
It's,
More
it's
inclusivity.
Yep, exactly.
Yes. And I remember last time we mentioned there are other organizations doing things right now. You mentioned Trevor Project. I
Yeah, the
believe.
Trevor Project is came about initially for transgender people in preventing suicide, and they do not limit their calls to only trans people. Anyone in the community is welcome to call. And honestly, I mean, if somebody's suicidal, I don't think that they would ever turn them away, even if they're not LGBTQIA plus. um, and they're available, text, phone call, chatting online, whatever it is that has you feel comfortable. There's the Hedrick Martin Institute that has a lot that they're doing for LGBTQ plus youth. They work with 19 to 24-year-olds, I think.
Okay.
Um, it's definitely at least 19 to 20, or sorry, 13 to 20 for sure. Um, and they help them find placement to be able to do internships, even right now online,
Wow.
paid internships. They provide counseling. They're there to help families. They're providing tablets to those who don't even have a way of getting online while we're all here in isolation. Um, they do a lot as well. So that's the Hedrick Martin Institute.
I know last time we
They're
talked about BetterHelp.
Yes, yeah.
BetterHelp is that it's counseling that you can do via text or video, Skype. But then they also have a division of Pride Help, which is you only get matched with members of the community. So then you don't have to kind of explain, that that is one at least commonality that you have, and if that's what makes you feel safer. They are fairly inexpensive, but I do know if you sign up and then message them saying this is actually all I can afford, they'll work with you on that, especially during Pride. I know they're going to have offers going on, but they're really great at making therapy and getting assigned a therapist really accessible for everybody. So they're
That's great.
awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this again. But yes, I'm so excited to continue watching your journey. I know I initially saw you from the music video with India Moore that you did. Was it "Don't Pull Away" by J Views, and I was like, that I need to know who that is, follow what they're doing, and I'm really grateful that I did that because I've learned so much, and you're such a light in not only this community but in the world. And so thank you for your time, and I wish you
Thank
the
you.
best.
So are you, and that you're doing this for everybody and holding strong even after, blowback comes. And really, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you and your love have so much fun, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye.